everybody. You might notice my background is a little bit different. We've been working on upgrading the studio and making some changes. Not finished quite yet, but I have a special guest with me today that I'm going to be bringing in shortly. This is an investigative piece that I've been working on for the past week, trying to work it into the already extra things I've been working on. So this is right off the bat, I'm going to tell you an ongoing investigation. I'm going to be continued to be working on this story, but I wanted to give the alleged victim in this case a chance to share her story as I'm working through it myself, because she is frankly saying she's afraid for her life because of how deep the corruption goes. So right off the bat, we are not going to be naming names as we talk this story through, because we are still working on getting all of the documentation. I have a lot already, but as she says, the state and the police department that's working this case are even giving me a hard time in handing this documentation over. So we want to give her an opportunity to share her story as I'm still working on this investigation. But at this point, we are not going to name names because these are powerful people that are being accused, and we don't want the backlash from that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in Courtney. She is a Miss Georgia United States 2021, but more importantly, she is a doctor, and she is saying that she was taken advantage of, and the state is burying her story. So we're going to let her tell it. So here she is. Courtney, thank you so much for being here. I do want to say off the offset, we're connected in a weird way through a phone and a laptop, so hopefully this all works out. Please let me know if you can hear her okay. We're actually using the audio from her phone and the video from her laptop just to make this work, make this happen. So please let me know if you have any trouble hearing her or anything, but we're just going to go with it. So Courtney, we began talking about a week ago, I believe, and I've been so busy and I've been trying to piece this story together because it has so many moving parts. But I know that this is traumatic for you to tell because I can hear it. And as you were telling me and kind of bouncing all over the place, I'm like, yeah, she's still dealing with a very traumatic situation. And I'm here to try and help you. And I even brought in another investigative journalist that is actually starting to help me with this, because you just feel like defenseless right now. You're trying to share your story. You're trying to get help from police, and you say that they are just slow walking this, that they're impeding your ability to defend yourself and to get some action on this. And you're really appealing to ask for help to bring a civil suit because the criminal suit is just not moving forward. So, like I said, this story is convoluted. So, Courtney, as you know, as I've done with you on the phone, I'm going to ask you at some points to slow down or back up or ask for some further details. So, just bear with me. And, folks, Courtney is so brave to be sharing this story. And, yeah, so with that, a long introduction, but I just want to make sure I hit all those points. So, here we go, Courtney. Let's start we did before from the beginning. You are a doctor and you were licensed in Georgia?
Florida.
Yeah, you're currently licensed in Florida, but you were
as a house physician.
As a house physician. And so you were trying to get licensed in Florida, correct?
I was trying to get licensed in Georgia. That's where my house was, and some initiatives and projects, and that didn't quite work out. So I got licensed in Florida, and then the event that you know of happened, and now we're responding to it.
Okay. So you reached out to, like I said, we're going to be vague. We're not going to name any names, but you reached out to a high-ranking official there, a medical official there in Florida for some help. And this individual ended up being able to help you. And but the condition was that you move to Florida, right?
Yes, away from everything that I knew, and everything that was familiar. And so here we are in Florida, speaking to you from the Miami metropolitan area.
Okay, so you ended up starting a relationship with this medical official, despite a wide age difference, and you kind of explained that,
But
he
I
was
was
doing
lied to about that, the extent of that, that difference.
extent of the wide age gap,
It's small
but
potatoes compared to some other things.
right. So you started this relationship with him, but you were explaining that part of it was, women can have these weird psychological things where you almost felt like you had to kind of start this relationship with him because he'd been able to pull strings, get you what you needed to get you there in Florida
Mhm,
and practicing medicine, which is what you wanted to do. So it was
mhm,
almost like obligatory, like that you were kind of in this relationship, and it wasn't there was nothing like physical at first. Um, and it was just kind of born out of obligation to start.
mhm.
Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct. And as mentioned, like there was a couple different reasons that I had um, crossed paths with this person. My father, he struggled or he suffered from this really rare illness, and so I was, and since his death, I've been looking for different experts that were able to find answers where there's only questions, and so the people that are connected to the Florida Board of Medicine had those answers, and so it was twofold. I had a licensure issue, and I also had the prospect of an incurable disease. And this person promised to solve both, yet he solved pretty much neither.
Okay, and so then it culminated in going to a medical conference.
The Florida Board of Medicine meeting.
Okay, and this was kind of the tipping point in that you realized you needed out of this. You No matter what the cost, you needed out of this situation. What happened at the medical conference?
I was assaulted over a period of a day and a half, like at the meeting within, maybe 100 feet from other board members that they were all around while this was happening. I ostensibly the Surgeon General could have been next door. I don't know. I mean, this was a state sanctioned event at which my assault took place. And then when I went to members of state to deal with it, to press criminal charges, that it was just radio silence because there has been systemic corruption, bribery, extortion, threats, blackmail to individuals that could do things. I mean, not only to me, but to people that are in positions to do things.
Okay, and so when you got out, were able to, get away from this situation, you went to the police and you filed a report.
Yes, immediately.
And you had to go through the humiliating experience of
Hmm.
getting a assault rape kit, correct?
Hmm.
And so that is documentation that you have been able to provide me with,
Hmm.
but you have
Yes.
not been able to provide me with a
You know too much.
I have a lot of documentation, but I'm working on getting more because this is a touchy thing. We need to have all our I's
Mhm.
dotted and T's crossed. But you were not able to get the police report and explain to me your efforts in getting a copy of your own police report.
How did I get a copy of the police report?
No, your efforts to get a copy of your police report.
Yeah, entirely unsuccessful. I have requested in numerous ways, and even at times like this matter has actually gone to the state attorney, and they are like, the matter. There's just all sorts of misinformation related to this as it relates to my location, my status on pressing charges, critical details that pertain to me that would be essential to solving this case. And that's why I'm concerned. That's why I consulted you, because I said, more people need to know about this. More people need to care. Someone as big as these defendants needs to come along and care as much about this issue as I do for the sake of myself and anyone else who's ever been in this situation, so that we can, not just yield results for me, but bring systemic change. When I had petitioned the governor, I said, I'm the future initiator of Courtney's Law for Florida. Nice to meet you. Why do I say that? Because that's what it's going to require. What exists right now causes people like me to fall through the cracks. And if I fall through the cracks, anyone can. And so, this is personal. It's an issue that I want to be handled. And I don't think, as I was telling a friend who is a Harvard medical school graduate, but he grew up in the foster care system, I was like, You know what? All doctors are created equal. I respect you just as much as someone who had a straight path that was, filled with affluence or whatnot. Um, so I'm not going to be marginalized just because my defendant is in a higher position. That's something that we have come up against throughout history. So this is a social and civil issue now.
Yeah. And so I have actually also called this, so we can say the name of the police department. It's Sea Lake Ranch Police Department that she filed her police report. I have
Mhm.
called myself and am waiting on a call back. I have the case number. I have also requested a copy of the police report. But you told me they told you that you can't get a copy of your own police report. What was the reason they gave?
There's no apparently it's super sealed, so victims don't know. There was different testing that was supposed to be ordered by the state attorney. I wasn't allowed to know of it really more than like a few days in advance. It turned into like all sorts of obscuring of facts and locations. This is held so tightly by people that have information that it actually prevents me from knowing about my own case and allowing it to go where it needs to go.
So they told
Um,
you can't get a copy of your police report because it's under seal in an open investigation.
Yes. And so in my correspondence with the state attorney, they were like, because I had reached out to other officials, as you know, there was one political aspirant involved. I had reached out to other politicians and I was like, please check the state attorney, find out the information on me. They're like, due to Florida law, we can only include the defendant's name in our record. So I said, well, I will tell you, please breach that. Put my full name down so you can find all the information as it pertains to this case and the defendant. Even still, things are obscured. And as I said, our laws cannot be so restrictive that they actually put us at risk. I think there needs to be a shaking up of sorts as it relates to policy in Florida as it pertains to these specific instances. There have been no results, there has been no change, and that is unacceptable because I was already victimized by a horrible crime. And because it is so horrible, because it concerns the state, and because more or less it comes to the doorstep of Ron DeSantis, nobody wants to deal with it because it's so bad. And I'm falling through the gaps in the meantime.
So this police department is difficult to work with because it is a small police department. It's a village
Mm-hmm.
police department. They don't even have a website. Um, they just have a Facebook page. And you're saying that part of the
They
reason you
have their own mayor. They have their own mayor, like their own planet, that is run by, these like really, well, you can guess. People
and
that,
that's why you feel like you can't get help with the police because
mhm,
your accusation is this Sea Lake Ranch Police Department is in a little its own little world with like
mhm,
high officials, affluent people, rich people,
mhm.
and that they're basically working to protect them as opposed to you, the victim.
Well, that's, it feeds itself because the police force is sustained by the people that may or may not commit crimes within the community. And
Oh, gotcha.
how Florida works is they're saying that this police force has jurisdiction over the matter. I petitioned for Broward Sheriff's Office. It just has to keep getting higher and higher. And sitting across from you is the last place that I want it to be, but it is the only place that I can be that I think results might emerge from. So, you know,
So So for the folks that are trying to follow the timeline, after you filed the police report, it got referred to the state attorney's office, and you did get to meet with a state attorney. And tell me about that meeting.
we spoke for about 2 hours, and he's like, it's really a serious business when we send doctors to prison, when we take physicians out of the hospital in handcuffs. So, Courtney, we need a greater burden of proof, especially for who you're referring to and the fact that you're also a doctor and that this occurred in a state sanctioned um, and location, because all of this is would be of concern to everyone in Florida and perhaps in different parts of the United States. It's a concern for doctors. Because of the gravity of this, we need a higher burden of proof. So that requires putting you through a rigorous set of gymnastics, which I was happy to agree to. But amidst that is a level of corruption and desire to defer and deflect and confuse the bringing on of this case. And so you have the defendant working with other officials and furnishing these confusing and malicious reports to try and say, oh, Courtney doesn't want to press charges. Courtney wants to focus on her career. I was threatened very specifically that I would not be able to successfully transition into a hospital if I sought justice for what I have experienced. And I filed MQA complaints and about slander as it relates to hiring, because me functioning in my capacity as a physician is a threat to this, to the lawsuit not being solved. There's a cacophony of, or a constellation of different factors that are going into this being negligently mishandled.
And so that is also why this story is hard to investigate, because it does have so many moving parts and so much alleged corruption. So when you weren't getting help, or you felt like you weren't getting help from the police department nor the state attorney's office, you reached out to a politician to try and get some action. And so tell me what happened with that. And obviously we're not naming names. This was a Republican candidate that you reached out to, and you take it from there.
Yeah. So in that window of time, I actually served as a campaign manager, and it was with this political aspirant, as mentioned, and I discovered that the defendant had bribed my boss. I was then forced to quit, and they committed election, or I would describe it as election meddling. This was a couple months ago. It has caused me endless harassment and problems since. In no way was I in any way complacent or okay with what had occurred. I was never present. I was forced to be a witness to something that was horrible, and it influenced the Florida Board of Elections as well as the Florida Board of Medicine. So this is so it's
interconnected. So you'd reach out. Let me repeat just so people can follow. You reached out to a politician, asked him for help with your case because you weren't getting help from the police department or the state attorney's office. This candidate said, okay, as long as you help me with my campaign.
Correct. So I was employed, and my title was campaign manager. And so you can imagine, when I then am confronted with this bribery, that I'm appalled, because I'm just like, not only am I an assault victim, but I just saw what you did, and in no way am I all right with that. And I still needed a remedy.
That people can follow you. What you mean by that is you're saying when you were working in this campaign manager position, you saw some emails go back and forth from the candidate and the doctor that you are alleging sexually assaulted you. And basically you're alleging that this doctor agreed to help this candidate win his primary.
They election meddle together. I mean, that, there's a lot of other moving parts, as I mentioned. Unfortunately, what you and I just discussed is like the surface. It's abhorrent. But as I said, I cannot be, if somebody does that, my focus is on a resolution to an assault, singularly, nothing else. So if the defendant wants to engage in some sort of hanky-panky, as it might influence other facets of life in Florida, again, I can't really have much concern with it. If I'm being harassed in bringing forth justice in my lawsuit by someone who has received some kind of, who has received something from the defendant, as I said, I can't be bothered with it. My focus is only on the assault. It is well chronicled, my response, the atrocity of it, the human rights violation, and the fact that that very response is pro-rape.
Right. And so what I can tell you folks is that I have documentation of the medical exam after this occurred. I have, you sent me the voicemails of the alleged assailant. I have a lot of documentation that you've sent me, but what the big thing that we're missing is that police report that this Sea Lakes Ranch Police Department has not even provided you with, which is just so crazy to me because they say it's under seal, it's an open investigation. So part of this and at least beginning to get this story out is to hopefully put pressure on this police department to get her
Hmm.
a copy of her own police report. And since you're disappointed with the criminal side of this,
So disappointed.
you feel like nothing's doing you want to pursue a civil suit against this doctor,
Yes.
but you said you've had difficulty in retaining a lawyer. You want to tell me about that?
I have gone through about half of the attorneys in Fort Lauderdale, and you know how sensitive this is because you've seen the information. Each time I have to disclose with them what happened. And then they have been burnt and turned by the defense to not bring this forward. And unfortunately, I don't think they're thinking even one step ahead in the fact that this has to be dealt with. As long as I exist, as long as their threats are microaggression and not, actually manslaughter or something, then I need an attorney. So they're going to have to allow that to happen. I had petitioned the Attorney General that I'm requesting the Florida Victim Witness Program because of the extent of witness tampering, because of the extent it's eroding me with these like minor threats, personal harm, blackmail, deception. And it's just a desire to prevent a rape victim from bringing forth justice. And it's not okay. I will not be portrayed or defamed or slandered because I'm already a victim, because somehow, for whatever reason, I stepped into a huge lawsuit. That's not my fault. I'm just here. It was the action of the defendant that incited that, not me. I'm just trying to make a way out. And I said the very same thing to the defendant. I said, neither of us, or to the detective who you have not yet reached, I said, neither of us chose to, with full understanding, chose to really engage with this defendant. The goal is to get out. That is my goal. I request either civil or criminal remedy to this, whatever extent it requires. If it requires a full reform of policy, which I think is exhaustive and totally ridiculous, then that's what has to happen. And as I mentioned, as it relates to, and it should be very clear, as it relates to the political influence, this was a sidebar conversation that the defendant who assaulted me had with the politician. I have zero desire to have my rape case connected to another individual. That is the heart of this matter. And every victim, every female victim, should never be tethered or tied to another person, whether it is a man or a woman, in the resolution of a lawsuit. And that's where the criminal justice system emerges, because they deal with victims in their own right. So there's a desire to make what has occurred look like anything other than what it is not. I'm a victim looking for a remedy to my lawsuit. If someone wants to sweep in and piggyback and essentially try and extort a assaulter, that's not my fault. There's nothing personal. I just can't have anything to do with it.
You feel victimized, well, multiple times over.
By two instances,
people,
in negligent mishandling.
The politician that you reached out to help you get some action with the police department and state attorney's office, you're saying basically, since this medical doctor is a high-ranking official in Florida, he was basically, your accusation is this politician basically extorted him money out of
Yes, he profiteered the knowledge he had to my detriment.
Oh, I see.
And I have been picking up the pieces ever since. And as I said, it's not personal. There's a collective effort to make it seem like anything other than that. This is very simple. Someone does something wrong, and the legal system has to handle it. Anyone that interferes with that is pro-rape.
To the end of election interference and election extortion, you said you reported that to the FBI?
Immediately, and I was threatened, chased, harassed for what I know. And so, I know I look nothing like Edward Snowden, but for whatever reason, as a rape victim, that is the fate that I have had to assume for this brief window of time between when I alert authorities and when they actually choose to deal with this. And it should be very clear, I am a conservative. I believe in conservative values, but it was liberals that were the first to run to my side when I said I was the victim of an assault and also the victim of someone who blackmailed my defendant. But I'm looking at this with complete neutrality as a means to an end to get justice, to get resolution. And that crosses all parties. You know, this problem is systemic and it's spreading. Just last week, I had petitioned Gadia C. Serralta, the United States Marshal, because this corruption is influencing matters of government, matters of state, and matters of country. And I had no idea when I was assaulted that it would be this insidious, but it is.
So you sound like you're asserting it's kind of just become like a good old boys network. No one is coming to your defense or holding your
They're
alleged
they're
assailant accountable.
trying, and with that is a concerted effort to defray them. And so that is why, and as I mentioned to you, the last place I want to be is sitting across from you tonight, but it's the only place that I think I can be where results might emerge from. No one who has been assaulted wants to make it a huge issue. But if that's the only thing, if that's the last choice, then that's the choice you have to make. Because, you know, if not being a pacifist makes me some kind of activist, then I guess that's what I am. I can't sit this one out. It's too personal.
And you said so far the FBI has basically wanted nothing to do with the sexual assault end of this, but they
Oh, they
they
do.
are.
No,
I
I
thought they
speak
were
to them
more
almost
looking
every
into the
other week.
election side.
They're looking at the election. You know, the people I met with, they're looking at election meddling, and they're very concerned with that because you know because of what it is. The assault is being handled at the state level and at the local police level, and so as I said, there's vast involvement.
And despite all of this that you're going through and feeling like you have nobody to really help support your efforts to hold anyone accountable, you are actually putting yourself in a position of wanting to help other women that are in these desperate situations.
I have to. So this is the irony of it is that um, prior to coming to Florida, you know, I have an initiative. It's called Outreach Angels, and it was focused on helping people, helping women, even the mentally ill. And this was a punctuation mark on that, but I'm not going to stop it because it's intrinsic to who I am. And so I've woven what I've experienced with this assault into what was pre-existing and created a sort of tapestry that is the Outreach Angels Women's Advocacy Network. And so we're just you know, as I said, just making it up as we go because this is ridiculous. And so I'm responding on the fly to things as they present themselves to me. And no, we will not capitulate. The only outcome that is, you know, an end is the resolution of this. The legal resolution for me in my own right, because in this country, women do have rights. They don't need their settlements or something to be woven through someone else. There is absolutely nothing that prevents, I mean, all the evidence is in plain sight. So there's nothing that prevents me from being dealt with in this capacity.
So this alleged sexual assault happened in what month?
So it occurred over the summer. The police began involvement in June, and then the spat out with the politician was in August near the primary, and that was when the FBI got word. Met me. I sat across the table from them, and I was like, "This occurred, but." The election actually was distorted as a result of an assault that has been mishandled, and I'm so that was that. And so then meet with the state attorney in September, and progress moving forward through October. Now weaving the existing organization I had to create a social initiative, which is Outreach Angels. And demanding change in that capacity. And my first interview since the assault happened was with WALB last week. I was very reluctant to do so. Obviously, this has been extremely traumatic. I don't feel very much like myself, but I'm doing my best. And so 3 news outlets in Georgia and 1 news station, like 3 newspapers and 1 news station, are very concerned about this. Speaking to entities in Florida will be a sort of pressure cooker scenario because this is where it all is. But as you know, and I CC'd you on like a group text last night, there's obviously a reporter in Florida who's like, let's do this. safety is a huge issue. Like, safety is the biggest issue, because the reason why I haven't been dealt with is because these individuals, the defendant, people that have been bribed along the way, they will benefit if I am not taken seriously as a victim. I don't know how you could not take me seriously. It wouldn't matter if I was a llama or a giraffe and this happened. There is some remedy, and I made that perfectly clear. So really, this is just childish. And unfortunately, what I've experienced in this is that certain facets of our government are actually run by men that have the mindset of teenage boys. And that is really hard to deal with when you're trying to get work done. It's very immature. And so, I am by no means a feminist. I just don't like bullies. And those happen to oftentimes be men, but it can be anyone. And so the Women's Advocacy Network is designed to bring women together that may have been marginalized by circumstances like mine. So that's what I'm working on now, because it chose me rather than me choosing it. But obviously, the goal from beginning to end has always been the lawsuit and to be taken seriously by Florida. When I was communicating with the governor through direct message, which I hope he reads, I was like, the best remedy to this, I hope, is to assist the Surgeon General in policing different entities that have corruption that I've been exposed to. So, if Ron DeSantis is looking to discern the appropriate reparation for what I've experienced, then it would be a post in matters of Florida state and medicine as they're intertwined, because as I told him, I have taken it on myself to police these things at will as a volunteer. But I think there needs to be more oversight. My life, what I experienced, the assault, is an example of that. And so, I want to be boots on the ground and help in a larger level. I think it was always inevitable that I would be involved in something at the level of Florida state. So if this is the instance, if this is the catalyst that requires that, then let it be.
And in a perfect world, we would be naming names and we would be giving all of the details, but we are holding back because this is just the first bit that we're allowing to be public, because I want her to be able to share her story. She is claiming she's being harassed, that they're trying to shut her up, that this assailant is trying to keep her from being able to work, things like that. So I wanted to give her an opportunity to share her story as I continue to investigate it. So I'm holding off on the naming of the accused at this point until I can get more of a response, or at least try to get a response from this police department that has not provided me with the police report. But I have plenty of other evidence that I've collected, and we just want to make sure that you can at least start to get your story out. Now, you did share this, you said, with some local news stations, but they have been hesitant to share your story.
They're chomping at the bit naturally, because this is atrocious. But the concern, even in my dialogue with the state attorney, is, do I have personal security to thwart the efforts of the defense to make me feel unsafe, whether it's harassment, criminal negligence? Do I have the team, so to speak, that's required to confront this?
And I mean, you said even the state attorney was saying
really,
this
he
is
was
a very
concerned
difficult
for his future. Yes.
Yes, because this is a very well-off, a very rich and high-ranking medical official, that it makes it more touchy, we'll say, to cover. The local news stations are more hesitant to cover it, and also even getting action from the state attorney's office is difficult. So, I mean, even in my case, I'm not going to release names until we dig even deeper into this, but I'm telling you, we have a lot of evidence collected already. I've already pulled in another investigative journalist to help put some pressure on and get some resolution, get things moving. So I will be having more updates to this story. But again, because you are telling me, I just want to be able to at least start sharing my story, because since, I've had funny things happen to me, like you said, a tire slash and things like that, you just wanted to make sure you got your story out in case something happened to you said, right?
Yes, absolutely. I was texting a former member of my organization, Chris Sheffield, who is the strongest person I know. He's a former professional football player and has gone through a lot. And I was like, I sent him the song Soldier by Destiny's Child. That's what the situation necessitates. It requires a soldier. I mean, it may require the National Guard, people that are comfortable being on the front lines with bullets flying around. That's what's going on here. I love my family very much, but they were the first pass to be brainwashed by the defense to not be able to embolden me to handle this appropriately. So unfortunately, I've had to rely a lot on my own strength in certain instances. I know that once this is resolved, once the Women's Advocacy Network is in its full force and strength, that they will feel comfortable, but everyone's afraid. Everyone's scared. And it's not just me. I just happen to be perhaps the most daring, I guess. What other people are terrified by, I'm not. If I feel compelled for a certain reason, and I absolutely do with this. So, that is what it is. And so you can love people, but understand that they may not have the same depth for a cause. They may not be as dedicated, as committed. And that doesn't make them, that's just what this situation is. It's a concisive and decisive effort to cover up a sexual assault.
Are you under the impression
I happen to be the victim. I'm just doing, operating in that space to the extent that
Are you under the impression that the FBI is taking this seriously? I mean, especially in regard to the election bribery accusation. Is the politician that you accused, is he aware that he's being investigated? Is the politician that you help?
Yeah, it's how the assault ties into the political election meddling. And so I have no qualms with the FBI. I would like the state attorney to feel more, by the hand of the governor, to feel more comfortable moving in this space so that he too is not in fear, and that everything speaks for itself. I would like, obviously, just as much as you would, that Sea Lakes would have open records, because open records are necessary for victims to communicate with the state pursuant to Florida law. And so we, it can't be this stalemate of sorts where they're not allowing the records to be released so progress can be made, because all of this very much did happen. That's not going to, we don't have a magic eraser. We cannot go back in time. So we need to be solutions focused rather than just perpetuating the problem by trying to cover it up, because my speaking to you tonight is evidence that, I'm here, the problem is here, and it hasn't been dealt with.
Yeah. All right, Courtney, I just wanted to basically give an introduction to this story, because it is complicated. It is a web, and we are trying to sort through it and work through it, collecting evidence to be able to share more. But Courtney, in the meantime, you said people can help support you by just supporting the Outreach Angels initiative that you have for other victims that feel alone and like they're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, so I guess there's two ways. So the organization, which is now supporting the Women's Advocacy Network, they can participate, either volunteer, attend a Eventbrite in Miami on the day before New Year's that Women's Advocacy Network is having for social change, or they can be a part of fundraisers. All of that is wonderful. They can communicate with me about ideas and expanding this, because I'm as much focused on growth as I am maintaining our gains. They could support me in the case through a GoFundMe, which is gofundme.com/my last name, which is KELLEIGH, which I made clear to you is almost the same as yours when I first reached out to you and said we could pretend to be sisters. So don't forget GoFundMe, because it's like Christy Lee with 3 extra letters.
So it's GoFundMe. You said it's GoFundMe.com/
Kelly, KELLEIGH,
like me. And I'm just putting that in the chat. There we go. Just so people can see it. There. Okay.
As I said, this is just such a failure, and it involves such high-level people. These are not thugs. And I said to Ron DeSantis, again, through email and direct message. I was like, would this be the case if my assailant was a hoodlum and not one of Florida's oligarchs? Would there be this obstruction of justice? Would I, a doctor, be marginalized to a historic proportion? No, absolutely not. And so I had talked to an individual who, she's actually an actress, and she has a nonprofit called No More Tears, and I'm hoping that she takes interest in me. We talked a couple months ago at the precipice of this, when it was just after the primary, when things were extremely chaotic. And so that actress, what was it, Somi Ali, I was talking to her and I was like, Somi, we need to do high profile crisis de-escalation. Like what you've experienced and what I'm in the thick of right now is the reason for that. Outreach Angels has done a certain degree of crisis de-escalation as it pertains to mental health crises. And so I had to extrapolate that into this like women's advocacy space. I'm looking for people to help me. I'm looking for people that want to do this. No one has to. If they're like, hey, this is my jam. Okay, you know how to get a hold of me. But this is not a miniature circumstance. These are highly capable people with resources. There's, this is not something that flies under the radar, and that's why it has taken so long. And so Outreach Angels may be offering high-profile crisis de-escalation as it pertains to what I have personally experienced and what others have personally experienced. I don't know what that team looks like, but those people of every kind actually are finding me as I am coming out on this experience. And so I would expect that building a crisis de-escalation team would be the same sort of experience. Yeah.
All right. Well, Courtney, I just wanted you to be able to at least begin to share your story. And like I said, I do have another investigative reporter that is now assisting me with this, because it is a bit of a web and it does involve high profile people. And so I will be continuing to update this story as the information becomes available and as we figure out the best way to present it and hopefully get some action for you. But thank you again, Courtney, for coming on. And again, reach out to outreachangels.org if you want to show Courtney some support in the meantime, and stay tuned. That's all I can say.
Yes. And if I may close off.
Yeah.
We're still on? Okay. Okay, good. So if I may close, this can be misinterpreted. I want what I've experienced to be a sort of a labor of love, a kind of a group effort where we can grow from this rather than what other forces might desire, which is for people to be torn apart. Outreach Angels is about bringing people together. And so my experience in this will be no different from that. I think that if people are a threat to the proper functions of government, a threat to my life, a threat to the proper resolution of a rape, then yes, I'll have to be a bit terse with them, as anyone would expect. But this is a initiative of bringing people together, of restoring people, of restoring hearts, of empowering victims. And some people will oppose that, as I've had to let news outlets know and say, for every 2 people that wants the Women's Advocacy Network, there is 1 person that does not. And you may have heard from them. Please publish my story. And they have. There's inertia, obviously. There's always inertia to change. I think that mankind fears 3 things: fire, God, independent thinkers. So, I believe you're an independent thinker, and this is the product of independent thinkers. And so, yes, they will be terrified, perhaps, but the change is so necessary. So this is what's happening. Yes, I hope people help the movement. More than anything, I would like this message to reach people at the hands of government, and that they would initiate me in the victim witness program to be handled properly based on the systemic corruption that's occurred and based on the scope of the person that has harmed me, and knowing what I will face, that it will require the involvement of the state. It's vitally important. No one can be an obstacle to something like this when it is so clear that would be petty, trite, and irrelevant. So, here we are.
Yeah. All right, Courtney. Well, yeah, I'm gonna be here for you to continue to investigate this and try and
Hmm.
put some heat on to get some action done so that they can't continue to slow walk your criminal investigation. And I hope that you are able to find someone to take up the civil side of things.
Hmm.
Obviously, this is a story, like I said, that I'm going to have to continue to investigate and bring the evidence forward, but just wanted to kind of scratch the surface of it tonight. But thanks again, Courtney, and thank all of you for tuning in. I'm going to get it out of here now. There we go.